Hello and welcome back to another EDH deck tech video. It's about that time of year again where I desire to play some giant dumb green deck that just puts all of its permanents into play. Which I've done before basically once every year. It's like an itch that just comes up and we're back. I've actually recorded a video with Thromok a year or two ago, and he is a personal favorite, so he's back in the command zone again. This is another high volume permanent deck. It is similar to my previous Thromok deck, just updated to current standards. It is just a green barf deck. I'll go ahead and throw it out real quick. You can see what we're running. It's essentially a mass ETB trigger, permanent trigger, token creation trigger, Warld, Genesis Wave deck. I love Thromok as a commander when I play Gruul. He is my second favorite Gruul commander, the first being Rada Kier of Keld. I can't remember her name. The elf, or whatever. But Thromok here is just a personal favorite. He is a 5-mana 0/0, which is always a good start. But he has a kind of an exponential growth where Devour X, where X is the number of creatures devoured. So for example, you devour 2 creatures, he is a 4/4. You devour 10 creatures, he's an 100/100. So obviously things like Warstorm Surge are in the deck, so you can just destroy someone out of nowhere. The way Devour works, a lot of people don't quite understand it. It's an as it comes into play effect, so you don't choose to devour before the spell is countered, for example. Like, if your spell is allowed to resolve, you can then choose to devour and people cannot respond by wiping your creatures. Alternatively, if someone decides to wipe all your creatures and not counter your spell, you can then choose not to devour anything extra. So Devour seems scary to play, but you actually do have a fair amount of control over that effect. Now, Thromok doesn't always come out unless I have a few key cards to utilize him efficiently. I do have a backup commander. Thromok is great if there are 2 to 3 opponents. If there are 3 to 4 opponents, I actually play Livonia. She is, again, just another personal favorite Gruul commander. My favorite mono green commander is actually Ayumi, the Last Visitor. These 2 creatures share the same effect of legendary land walk, so a 6-mana 4/4 first strike with upside if someone is playing an Urborg or a Yawgmoth Hollow or Academy Ruins or something like that. But she doesn't come out too often either. The deck really is mainly about World. So as I said, the deck has mass creatures. This entire stack is creature spells. A lot of this is mana generation. This was kind of what my previous deck was missing. It was a bit slower. This deck is still quite slow in today's meta and standard. There's a uptick of competitive playing decks, most likely attuned to different channels promoting competitive play, which is making everyone feel compelled to play that. Not everyone has to, so this is more of a casual funsy deck. So we have mana dorks. We have Jorga Tree Speaker, we have a bird, we have the Fenhorn Elves, we have the Llanowar Elves, and we have the Elvish Mystic. A whole bunch of 1-drops, essentially. Then we have the Arbor Elf as well as 1-drop. We have a few 2-drops. Sylvan Caryatid is essentially just the most generic good stuff 2-drop hexproof that you can get that's not a Secure Tribe Elder, which is actually right here. Then we have a Burdine Emissary. This is typically not a good card, but it is of course generically okay with Thromok. It's just sack fodder and something that will replace itself at some point in the game. Then we have the 3-drops. Again, a lot of stuff that comes into play and gets me lands. This deck runs 38 lands, 1 of which is a non-basic land. So this doesn't even go get like a stomping ground. But we have the ones that essentially just gets all the lands into play. Essentially, again, a high permanent deck where every card I want equates to another permanent being put into play. So when I do build up to something like a Warp World, I have a very high volume of returned cards. Farhaven Elf just gets a basic into play tapped. Nisa not into play, and unfortunately it doesn't ramp me, but it does guarantee a landfall. And the good thing is if she is shuffled in for Warp World, she will be back as a creature. Warp World does not give you planeswalkers, so this is actually a fairly decent card here. Yawgmoth Elder doesn't quite give me permanent advantage, but he is a nice replacement effect when he dies to like a sacrifice. We have Manglehorn, one of my favorite new cards printed in the most recent year. A little bit of Staxy hate against artifact ramp decks. It just makes artifacts go to play tapped, and the 1 trigger of destruction is nice. Rexlage can help get us the enchantments that we may need to get to. Fierce Empath is a fantastic sequencing card. I like to sequence and use this to get the Woodland Bellower, so I can then go get whatever one of the 3 drops you're seeing here is. And if, for example, I don't have, or if I start with Woodland Bellower, I might actually use this so I can then go get another creature. We have the Eternal Witness, which is a common target for Woodland Bellower. We have Undued Giant. These are not good cards, but these are generically here because of what the deck is trying to do. Every permanent is equating to another additional permanent. So we have Undued Giant, Inquiring Ranger, 4 drops that get us a land. There should be a Solomon here, but there's not. Perforos, God of the Forge, is actually one of the win conditions of the deck. There are 3 Eternal Witness effects that I can use to pick up a Warp World. So essentially the deck is attempting to put about 33% of its permanents into play. So when I resolve a Warp World, I can then create more permanents and pick up the Warp World and do it again. That is the goal of the deck. It doesn't always happen, but if that is happening, then Perforos is going to kill all of the opponents before combat even becomes relevant. We have Master of the Wild Hunt, so we can make some tokens. We have Mom and Dad, so they can make more tokens. Essentially, it comes into play, it generates 2 permanents. It comes into play, may generate a bunch of permanents. This one, unfortunately, does nothing when Warp World hits it. Comes into play and generates a permanent. I like the new artwork on the From the Vault Transform. It looks really nice. We have, comes into play, from hand, if I'm casting it, it's going to generate something extra. Knock something out. Comes into play. Well, these 2 actually are here mainly just for Thromok. So, yes, it takes 5 creatures to make Thromok a 25/25. It only takes 21 commander damage to kill somebody. So we can just sack 5 creatures and have a lethal-sized commander. The issue is, of course, he is vanilla. He's a vanilla 25/25. So if the Brawn or the Anger are some of the cards that Thromok is eating, these 2 will be in the graveyard. He could have haste and trample. Very good. We have Anasic Slime, another ETB good stuff thing. Xenagos is another way of giving Thromok haste. We have Siege Gang, which comes into play, gives me 3 permanents. Comes into play, gives me 3 permanents. Makes extra permanents. This is another variant of the Eternal Witness. This is here just to pick up Warp World, maybe even Genesis Wave. We have Green Warden as the 3rd way of picking up something from the graveyard. Again, this is intended to pick up Warp World, so we can then try to get another go at it. We have Soul of the Harvest and the Primordial Sage as the generic draw engines of the deck. Then we have Humoro. This is another fun game with Thromok. I can eat Humoro and give Thromok flying and +2/+2 and fire breathing. That is essentially a Shiv's Embrace, the old enchantment from Urza's Saga that's been printed a few times. He is a 6 mana for a 4/4 that cannot block if he dies, like if he were devoured. He turns into a global enchantment for my creatures that they all get +2/+2 flying and fire breathing. We have a duplicate for good ETB stuff, Inferno Titan for good ETB stuff, Woodland Bellower. Again, if you're unfamiliar with the card, it is 6 mana for a 6/5. It comes into play. I may search my deck for a non-legendary green creature with converted mana cost 3 or less and put it straight into play. I hate the fact that he won't let you get legendaries. That means you can't get something like a Gaddock Teague or something like that, but he does get you essentially a toolbox of a bunch of cards you saw earlier. Anything from a Farhaven Elf, a Reclamation Sage, an Eternal Witness. Very good card. We have a Dragon Broodmother. This essentially just generates a bunch of little extra tokens. This is kind of like a bait spell because people will get confused by seeing the unique janky casual shit and they try to kill it. Same thing, Dragon Layer Spider. This tends to just generate a whole bunch of tokens or just one single token when someone goes to kill it. We have Ulvenwald Hydra as a fantastic card. As I said, there is one single non-basic land in the deck, and this is way I can tutor it straight to play. Rampaging Beowulf is a fantastic card to go with a Warp World or a Genesis Wave effect because it generates an absurd number of extra tokens. Enters the battlefield +4 permanents. Enters the battlefield. Well, again, this is another thing, just like the Beowulf, Rampaging Beowulf there. Any land that comes into play with this off of a Warp World or Genesis Wave will just generate a shit ton of permanents. Avengers Zendikar, same thing. And Hornet Queen, it comes to play, gives me 4 permanents. Woodfall Primus and the Terastodon are to ETB destroy some shits. Typically I don't want to give the opponents more permanents if I'm going to try to Warp World again. But that's sometimes, I mean, this is a May ability, I don't have to do it. And devouring a persist creature is always fun as well. I can just get a second read behind Woodland. Now that is an enormous stack of creatures. Like, the deck is obviously creature based. But there's a few things that are not creatures. So obviously the deck does not always have to win via combat damage. Thromok can get very big very easily. He is essentially a 5 mana gigantic thing. If he is allowed to resolve and I sack like 5 things, I have a 25/25, and then I can use something like Fling to just kill somebody. I mean, it's very easy to make Thromok 100/100. There are so many token creation effects in this deck. It is beyond easy. So a 2 mana murder spell is funny. Of course, the issue if this spell is countered, sacking the creature is part of payment. I'm not going to get anything back. Genesis Wave and Boundless Realms and Warp World. These are the 3 big spells of the deck. Genesis Wave essentially just dumps the deck into play. The problem, of course, Genesis Wave puts other spells into my graveyard, so I have to have an Eternal Witness effect to pick something up if I want to play more. Boundless Realms is ideal to do this before either of these spells, so I have double the lands, essentially a far higher volume of permanents. And Warp World. This is my favorite card of the deck. It's literally why I built the deck. It's 8 mana. This is pre-Planeswalkers, so Planeswalkers and instances and sorceries don't get involved. What this is, in short, when this resolves, count the number of permanents you own, shuffle them into your deck. And if you shuffle your commander and it doesn't count for that total number, and then you reveal that many cards off the top of your deck. All permanents come into play. Enchantment is secondary, so if you have an aura, it comes and attaches. Spells like instant sorceries and planeswalkers, they go on the bottom of your deck. This deck is designed to abuse the fuck out of this card. It essentially, again, it's just all my stuff comes into play and generates more permanents. And I have 3 ways of picking this up out of my graveyard. And my lands are almost, every single land I have in the deck comes into play untapped. So this deck can sequentially pick it up and cast it again and again and again until my entire deck is into play. Mathematically, if I have about 33 permanents out, which isn't too uncalled for a token generating deck, while I may not be able to appear lethal, I just have a bunch of lands and 0/1 tokens, for example. If this is allowed to start chaining off, I'm going to put my entire deck into play. The Growing Rites, this is a fun new enchantment. Essentially this is here just because I can flip it into a budget Gaia's Cradle, but I mean this is a permanent that will come into play from Warp World and hopefully get me an extra card into my hand. We have Warstorm Surge. Unfortunately, this doesn't work well with Warp World. The enchantments will come into play after the creatures. This is here only because of Thromok, and because I can just resolve a Thromok and sack 5 things and dome someone in the head for 25, or more if I have more creatures. We have a Skull Clamp because I have a shit ton of tokens, and a Birthing Pod so I can sequence good stuff out of my deck, and a Panharmonicon for dumb reasons. I mean, everything in the deck does ETB stuff. Torpor Orb breaks my deck, so let's have the opposite Torpor Orb and just go crazy. As I said, there are 38 lands in the deck, only 1 non-basic. It's the Kessig. I mean, you can kill people with a Farhaven Elf if you have the mana and a Kessig Wolfron. That's the reason. Then we have 20 Force. I'm playing with the fun Urza ones, and 17 Mountains. Again, the same Urza ones. I will eventually replace 2 Mountains. So I'll have 15 mountains in the end. One will be a wooded foothills, the other will be that Mirage Tapland. So this is my token deck. Oh, I must of course show off the tokens. So I am a token whore. I don't get to show off my token collection very much. I have about 2 fat packs worth of collectible tokens. So every token generator in this deck, I have the matching tokens, promo when possible. So we have those, we have some cheeky ones. I have 4 ones somewhere. We have the matching Omnath tokens, the ones for the Devour Dragon, the Old Beast tokens to go with the Baloth. We have the plant tokens with the magic bags to go with the Avenger. We have 1 of each scion to represent the Kozilek, the Ulamog, and the Emrakul guilds, whatever. We have these tokens to go for the Dragon Lair Spider. We have the insect tokens to go with the Hornet Queen, the ghetto-ass mirror tokens to go with the Battle Ball, We have, of course, 3 gobs to go with the goblins, and the 3 elephants to go with the Terraston. I just love having matching tokens. My OCD always likes to make things match, and OG tokens are fun. But yes, this is my Thromok deck. Once again, I have made just a big dumb green deck that likes to put all the permanents into play repeatedly. I mean, that's generically what I do when I play green. I get this desire maybe once a year, I play it a few weeks, I shit my entire deck into the table a few times, and then I'm done. And I guarantee you about this time next year, I'll be doing it again. But yeah, any opinions, ideas, or feedback, I am always welcome. Thanks.